At my husband's funeral. My son said, "Stop crying, pack your bags, and get out now." I froze for a second, letting the words settle like stones in water, then smiled, picked up my purse, and walked out quietly. The story you're about to hear is a work of fiction created by the Her Chains channel team, based on real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotions, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. My name is Evelyn Harper. I am 61. The words had landed like a hammer strike, echoing in my ears as I sat frozen in the third pew. Around me, people murmured prayers, offered condolences, yet I could barely hear any of it. The coffin before us was polished mahogany, topped with a simple spray of white lilies. Mason, my only child, stood beside his wife, arms crossed, jaw tight, his eyes cold. I had never seen him like this. Not even as a teenager. I swallowed, kept my shoulders straight, and nodded at the priest. I didn't want anyone to see the trembling of my hands, the ache in my chest. Not for Mason, not for Crystal, not for the strangers who thought they understood grief. I remembered back when I had married Thomas. 40 years ago, a life built together, a home full of warmth and laughter. And now, in that moment, every memory felt fragile, as if it could shatter into dust with a single glance. My black dress clung to me, a shield of decorum over the storm of betrayal inside. Mason's words had been deliberate, rehearsed. Crystal's hand squeezed his arm subtly, and I knew they had planned this moment in silence. Long before the funeral began, the ache in my chest twisted sharper. It wasn't just grief. It was disbelief, betrayal, and the startling clarity that nothing about this day would go as expected. I rose quietly, adjusted my shawl, and walked toward the side door, keeping my pace measured. Outside, the autumn air pressed against my cheeks, indifferent to my sorrow. I slipped the door closed behind me, a faint click echoing like the first step of a plan that was just beginning. Tomorrow morning would be different, and I would be ready. I closed the front door behind me and leaned against it for a long moment, letting the lock click shut. Inside, the house was silent, too quiet, but it was mine. I moved through the rooms with careful steps, each one a memory of laughter and loss, of Thomas and Mason, and years that felt both endless and gone in a flash. In the bedroom, I unzipped the black duffel bag I'd kept tucked away in the closet. 2 pairs of jeans, 3 blouses, underwear, socks, toiletries. Methodically, I folded each item and slid it into place. My hands shook slightly, not from fear, not from grief, but from the focus it took to be deliberate when the world felt upside down. The phone buzzed. Mason's name flashed, but I ignored it. He'd try to call, to yell, to persuade, maybe even to threaten. He thinks I'm broken, that my grief will bend me. Yet I fold each blouse with deliberate care, a quiet defiance he could never anticipate. I slipped a small notebook into the bag, the one with months of evidence I'd gathered, quietly statements, receipts, the beginnings of a plan he could never see coming. A soft knock at the study door startled me. Evelyn Marcus, my neighbor and friend, peeked in. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," I said, voice calm, almost casual. "Just packing." He nodded, understanding more than I said, then left quietly. I closed the duffel and zipped it tight. The sound final, deliberate. I paused at the staircase, hand on the railing, taking a steadying breath. Tomorrow morning, Mason would be in for a surprise, and I would be ready. The morning light was soft, almost lazy. As I sat at the kitchen table sipping lukewarm coffee, my bag rested against the wall, packed and ready, every item in its place. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator, and for a moment, I let myself feel a strange calm. Then the phone rang. Unknown number. I ignored it. A few seconds later, a louder, more insistent ring. Mason. I don't answer. He shouldn't expect me to. Outside. Tires crunched on the driveway. I peeked through the curtains. Barely breathing. Tires crunched on the gravel. I peeked through the curtains. 2 black and white cruisers edged up, lights faintly flashing. My pulse quickened, but I stayed still, savoring the quiet thrill of anticipation. My heart stuttered. A controlled panic. The officers approached the door, badges glinting in the sun. Inside, Mason was pacing. Crystal hovered near the kitchen counter, phone pressed to her ear. Everything's fine, she said, voice tight. Just a routine check. They'll leave soon. The officers knocked again. Mason froze, then stepped to the door, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Can I help you? He said, voice faltering. Sir. Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department, one officer said, showing a badge. We have a warrant to speak with you regarding a financial investigation. Mason's jaw clenched. Investigation. There must be a mistake. I haven't done anything wrong. The second officer stepped forward. Please open the door. We need to proceed. Crystal grabbed his arm, whispering fiercely. Stay calm. Just stay calm. He looked at her, panic flickering across his face. I watched from my window, a quiet satisfaction settling over me. Months of preparation, careful planning, every detail laid out. Mason thought he was in control. The officers began knocking with more authority. Mason's hands shook. Crystal's eyes widened. The trap had sprung. I slipped back into the house quietly, careful not to disturb the faint buzz of tension still lingering in the air. My duffel bag waited by the staircase, but I didn't touch it. First, I needed answers. The study desk held the old Dell laptop, disconnected from the cloud, as I had left it months ago. Opening it, I navigated through folders labeled meticulously with dates, names, and transactions, bank statements, loan applications, screenshots of emails. Crystal had been thorough, but in her confidence, she'd left gaps. A file caught my eye. Auto loan applications. One entry stood out, a $24,000 SUV approved in my name, complete with my social security number. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just fraud. It was a test of how far they'd go. My pulse quickened. The signature was mine or a perfect copy, and the email trail showed Crystal had asked Mason for my social security number. I sank into the chair, reading each line with deliberate calm. Mason's name appeared repeatedly, unwittingly enabling her schemes. He hadn't known the full extent, but he had given her access. Piece by piece, a knock at the front door made me start. I ignored it, focusing on the files. The pattern was clear: fraudulent accounts, credit lines, loans, all opening under my identity. The total added up to $274,000. My stomach twisted. I leaned back, running a hand over my face, the weight of betrayal pressing down. Mason trusted her. I trusted him. Both had underestimated me. By mid-morning, I was seated across from Edward Mitchell, my lawyer of 25 years, in his office on the 20th floor of the Duke Energy Center. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, but I barely noticed. My hands rested on a thick folder, heavy with evidence bank statements, loan applications, screenshots, and the carefully organized documentation of Crystal's fraud. Kenneth, Edward said, his voice calm but direct. You've done your homework. This isn't just about recovering money. This is about control, timing, and evidence. Crystal thinks she's clever. She's about to find out she isn't. I nodded, my jaw tight. I need her stopped before she drains anything else. I want her caught red-handed. Edward flipped through the folder. We can amend the trust. Add a clause what we call a poison pill. Any secondary beneficiary accused of fraud, theft, or financial crimes against you is automatically disqualified from inheritance. Assets transfer immediately to a neutral third-party foundation. It's airtight. I leaned forward. Do it. And the accounts freeze everything she could touch. I want the evidence ready for law enforcement when she makes her move. Already in motion, he said. Detective Santos will coordinate surveillance. She's discreet, thorough, and knows how to catch fraud without tipping off the suspect. I exhaled slowly, absorbing the plan. Every detail had to align trust amendment, frozen accounts, coordinated police, evidence ready. Crystal believed she controlled the timeline. She didn't know I had been planning for months. Crystal believed she had time. She had no idea how long I'd been preparing. Edward glanced at me, sharp eyes assessing. Mason's involvement complicates things. He may have unwittingly given her information, but this plan ensures she can't exploit it further. Your evidence is clear, and the trap is solid. I closed my eyes for a moment, imagining Crystal walking into my home tomorrow morning, thinking she's in control. Every step she takes will be exactly where I want her. Edward tapped the folder. Once we execute this, there's no turning back. Are you ready? I opened my eyes. A quiet fire burning? Yes. Let's catch her before it's too late. The clock read 8:58 when Crystal's white Mercedes rolled up the driveway. I stood behind the door, arms crossed, watching her step onto the porch. Her blonde hair was pulled tight into a sleek bun, a cream pantsuit hugging her frame. She carried a leather portfolio under one arm, confidence in every deliberate movement. Mr. Morrison, she said, voice smooth, almost cordial. We need to finalize the paperwork. I didn't answer immediately, just opened the door wider and stepped aside. Come in, Crystal. Let's make this quick. She glanced at the house, but didn't admire the crown molding, the stained glass, or the careful restoration. Nothing. Straight into the living room. She set the portfolio on the coffee table and flipped it open. Here's the first document, she said. Christopher executed this 6 months ago. The house, his trust fund, everything primary beneficiary. Me. Not a copy. Notarized and witnessed by 2 attorneys. I picked it up, scanning the signature. Too perfect. Clean. Precise. Christopher's handwriting had always been messy. Hurried. This is fake, I said calmly. Setting it down, Crystal raised an eyebrow, unbothered, completely legal. And here's the quitclaim deed. Transfers ownership of the house to me effective immediately. You have 7 days. I smiled softly, almost indulgently. 7 days. Huh. I'll make it easier for you. I picked up the deed, read it slowly, then set it back down. I'll be out by sunrise tomorrow. Enjoy the house, but only because you think you're in control. Everything else has already been accounted for. Her eyes flickered, a momentary crack in her practiced mask. You're serious? Absolutely, I said, keeping my voice calm, steady. I just hope you brought your attorney to make this official. She nodded slowly, caught herself, and walked toward the door, heels clicking on the hardwood. I opened it for her. She paused on the threshold. I'm sorry it had to be like this, she said. No, you're not, I replied softly. She got in the car and drove away. I closed the door, letting the silence settle. I sat in the quiet study, the laptop humming softly in front of me. Detective Santos slid the first file across the desk. This is 6 weeks before Christopher died, she said. Her eyes held mine, steady and professional, but I could see the weight of what we were about to hear. I pressed play. Christopher's voice, unmistakable, came through. Are you sure this will work? A calm, measured female voice answered. Crystal, your dad's grieving. He's alone. We take everything before he even realizes what's happening. I gripped the edge of the desk, knuckles white. My heart raced, a cold, hollow ache spreading through my chest. My son was part of this. Christopher, he asked, nervous, tentative. He won't find out. Crystal's tone was clinical, almost excited. Not a chance. Everything is lined up. Life insurance, trust fund, $3.3 million total. We disappear, new names, new life. I froze. The room spinning. $3.3 million de bassom. That was what my son's life was worth to them. And to think. He had laughed nervously, like a boy sneaking a forbidden treat, not realizing he was agreeing to betray his own father. He trusts you, Crystal said. That's his weakness. That's how we make it work. I wanted to scream, to reach through time and stop him. Stop her. But this had already happened. The recording continued, describing every calculated step. The faked accident, the insurance claim, the perfect plan to vanish. Christopher's voice grew quieter, resolved, weighing risk. Calculating, almost detached. Okay, he said finally. I'll do it. My chest tightened. He agreed to betray me, to risk everything, all for greed and escape. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of months of blind trust, the betrayal of the one person I had loved unconditionally. Santos reached across the desk, placing her hand lightly on mine. This is evidence of premeditation. Mr. Morrison, he was complicit, at least at first. And she planned his end carefully. I nodded numbly, unable to look away from the screen. The shock, the heartbreak, the betrayal, they all pressed in at once. How could they plan this behind my back for so long? I pressed stop and sat back, the silence louder than any scream. My son was gone, and now I knew the truth. I followed Detective Santos into the quiet house, the yellow crime scene tape fluttering slightly across the front porch. We'll start with the master bathroom, she said, voice low but firm. She had access here, and this is where she likely took the pills. I nodded, silent. My heart thudded in my chest as we stepped inside. Gerald Simpson, the forensic specialist, knelt by the cabinet. Gloves on, flashlight in hand. Mr. Morrison found something, he said, holding a small orange prescription bottle. My hands went cold. That was it. That was the bottle I had filled 6 months ago for my hip pain. 30 pills, 10 milligrams each. Santos carefully took the bottle. It's been wiped clean, exterior spotless. She noted, we'll pull prints from the inside cap. If Crystal touched it, we'll have a direct link. I swallowed hard. Every detail, every precaution she had taken, everything was coming together. This was the proof we needed to connect her to Christopher's death. And the pills, I asked, voice shaking. They're gone, Santos said softly. She administered them deliberately. This is premeditated. But with this bottle and the recordings, we can tie her directly to the crime. I exhaled slowly, the first real breath since discovering the truth. Relief, yes, but heavy with grief. The knowledge that my son's death was not an accident, that the betrayal had been calculated, settled over me like a weight. Simpson began photographing evidence, bagging documents, and logging everything meticulously. Santos checked each piece, double-checking dates, signatures, and notes from our meetings. I watched silently, my mind running through the months of planning I had undertaken, the trap carefully laid for a woman who thought she could take everything. Hours later, as the last drawer was examined and files sealed, Santos turned to me. Kenneth, This is it. We've documented everything. The laptop, the pills, the recordings. This is enough for first-degree murder charges and the full fraud investigation. She won't escape this. I nodded, my chest tight with both grief and anticipation. Good. I just want her stopped. Santos's eyes were steady. She's done. And the court will see it all. You did everything right. I followed her out to the porch, looking back at the house I had built and defended, knowing the next step would bring justice. Will it be enough before she tries anything desperate? The courtroom was fuller than I expected, nearly every seat taken by reporters, court staff, and a few familiar faces from Christopher's life. I sat in the front row, Edward on my left, Santos on my right. The air was thick, tense, every shuffle and whisper magnified. My hands rested on my knees, knuckles white, my heart hammering as the side door opened. Crystal walked in, flanked by two bailiffs. The weight of the orange jumpsuit pulled at her shoulders, her blonde hair tied back in a messy ponytail. Shadows under her eyes. No makeup, no designer clothes, just a raw, stripped-down version of the woman who had orchestrated my son's death. She didn't glance at me, didn't acknowledge anyone, and took her seat beside her lawyer, Stephen Chambers. Mid-40s, his expensive suit a stark contrast to her defeat. Judge Harold Bennett, silver-haired and sharp, entered. We all stood. He nodded, took his seat, and gestured for us to sit. "We are here for the plea hearing of Crystal Ann Morrison," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Mrs. Morrison, please stand." She obeyed, head down, hands cuffed. "Do you understand the charges against you?" the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor." Crystal's voice was quiet, steady. "And have you had sufficient time to consult with your attorney?" "Yes, Your Honor," she replied again. The Assistant District Attorney, Nicole Thompson, "Us, Your Honor, the defendant faces 5 counts of bank fraud, 4 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of aggravated identity theft, 2 counts of forgery, 1 count of conspiracy to commit financial crimes, and 1 count of first-degree murder in the death of Christopher James Morrison." She paused as the courtroom went silent, the weight of each word sinking in. Judge Bennett turned to Chambers. "How does your client plead guilty?" "Your Honor," he whispered. Crystal's jaw tightened. A brief flicker of defiance before it faded. "Yes, guilty to all charges," she confirmed under oath. Edward rose, his voice calm but commanding. "In exchange for her guilty plea and cooperation, the state recommends 18 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 15 years. Additionally, full restitution of $374,000 to Mr. Morrison, covering all fraudulent accounts and loans." Judge Bennett nodded, eyes fixed on Crystal. "Mrs. Morrison, your actions were deliberate and without remorse. You manipulated a grieving father, orchestrated fraud, and caused the death of a young man. This sentence reflects the severity of your crimes." Crystal remained silent, expression empty, hollow. The bailiff stepped forward, guiding her toward the side door. For a brief moment, she looked directly at me. Her eyes were no longer cold or calculating, just empty. The door closed behind her. I exhaled slowly, relief mingling with grief. Edward placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's over," he said. I nodded, staring at the empty defense table where she'd confessed, realizing that even with justice served, my son was gone. Does seeing her punished ease the pain of losing Christopher? Not yet, but it was a start. I sat alone in the living room, the courtroom still echoing in my mind. The orange jumpsuit, the handcuffs, the guilty plea they were over, but the emptiness lingered. I reached for the small bag I'd packed that morning. After Mason's shocking demand at the funeral, it felt heavier now, filled not with clothes, but memories, grief, and clarity. Edward's words replayed in my head. Justice had been served. Crystal would pay for her crimes. Restitution would restore what she stole. Yet Christopher's absence remained a permanent shadow. I whispered aloud. I did what he asked. I told the truth. Even when it hurt, my voice trembled. But my resolve steadied me. Santos had reminded me that strength sometimes means choosing integrity over comfort. Trust is fragile. Love is complicated. And people can surprise you with betrayal. But I understood resilience. Life moves forward, even after the deepest wounds. I placed the bag by the door, no longer a symbol of escape, but of agency. Packing it had been my first act of calm control amid chaos, now marking the start of reclaiming my life. I pressed play on my phone, hearing Christopher's laugh, Helen's gentle voice, echoes of lessons learned. Life would never be the same, but I would keep moving, keep remembering, and keep living. If this story resonated, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and subscribe for more real-life stories about courage, betrayal, and finding strength in loss. How do you live on after betrayal, loss, and justice served?